Greetings, my name is Kerry and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm filming an unhaul video for you. So this is not quite as big as my last unhaul because I'm finding it increasingly hard to part with books, particularly ones I haven't read before. Some of these I have read, some I haven't. They're broken down into categories, so as I go through I'll tell you the reasons why I'm unhauling them. So the first ones I'm going to go through quite quickly. These are from my book Death Row, so if you haven't seen my latest book Death Row update, I will link that down in the description. You can go and check that out. So these are all books that were on my book Death Row list that I've decided I don't want to keep. I didn't actually finish any of them. Most of them I read the first chapter of. The first one that I'm going to talk about is Sisterland by Curtis Sittenfeld. So if you've seen my Death Row video or my June wrap up, I've talked about that a bit more, and there I got to about page 150 of this and I was just really bored, so I gave up with it. This next lot I read sort of the first chapter or maybe like around to the 20-page mark in these and decided I didn't want to read them. I've talked about all of these in my book Death Row video, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'm just going to go through them. So we've got Lake Woebegone Days by Garrison Keillor, My Name is Angel by Rhea Coombs, The Devil Wears Prada by Lauren Weisberger, Pattern of Shadows by Judith Barrow, At Freddy's by Penelope Fitzgerald, and The Sailor in the Wardrobe by Hugo Hamilton. The main reason for most of these was that I didn't like the writing style. And then one more book that was from my book Death Row and its sequels that I've decided to unhaul was Black Trillium by Marion Bradley, Julian May and Andre Norton. This was just really boring. It's supposed to be a really great epic fantasy series, but the prologue and the first chapter was just a massive info dump and it wasn't exciting or engaging, and I just got really bored really quickly, so I'm getting rid of that one. There were 3 sequels that I had, so there are 6 I think in the series in total, and the sequels were written by various combinations of the original 3 authors. So we've got Lady of the Trillium, Blood Trillium and Sky Trillium. I wasn't ever going to get into the series, I don't think, so they're all going. Next we have a few books I actually have read and I'm getting rid of them for various reasons. I mean, mainly because I didn't enjoy them. Not that I didn't enjoy them, actually saying that. These were all 3-star reads, so they're all books that I did enjoy to an extent, but I wouldn't reread. So we've got Journey to the Centre of the Earth by Jules Verne. I think I read this in January and it was alright. Standard early sci-fi, where they do things that we probably now understand to be slightly impossible, but it was a good sort of adventure story and I quite liked it, but yeah, I won't reread it. Then we have Tentacle by Rita Indiana. I also read this in January. This was a very, very weird book. It is science fiction. Really good trans rep in it. Oh, well, I believe so. Not being trans myself, I can't actually speak to the accuracy of the representation, but I thought the way those issues were handled was really well done, personally. So if you're interested in science fiction and LGBT plus rep, then maybe check this one out, but it is super duper weird. It's one of the weirdest books I've ever read. Not unenjoyable, but just I don't want to go back there. I don't really know what else to say about it apart from it was alright. It was weird and I enjoyed it, but I don't want to reread it. Then we have Lars Orchestra Saves the World. So I read this in May and wasn't up to the standard of other Alexander McCall Smith books that I've read. I realised I don't really like his standalones. This one I thought would be more about the orchestra, but it wasn't. So it was a little bit disappointing, so I'm getting rid of it. And then we have The House on Rosebank Lane by Millie Gray. So this was a copy I received from the publisher and I reviewed it, so I'll link the review down below. I did enjoy it. It's not a sort of book I read very often, so I enjoyed it maybe more than I was expecting to, but it's not one I'm going to reread, so that is going too. So next we have, I suppose I'm going to call them duplications, although they aren't necessarily. Well, the first one is Agatha Christie's Nemesis, which is a Marple book. I realised I had 2 copies of this because I have a collection, you'll see some more of them in a minute, of, I thought they were Reader's Digest, but they're another publisher, and I realised that I had this book in one of their editions as well, which is a slightly nicer edition. So I've kept that version and I'm getting rid of this mass market paperback. And then we have a couple of omnibus editions that I've replaced with individual copies of the books you'll have seen from my book hauls. So we've got my Bronte omnibus, which had Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights and The Tenant of Wildfell Hall in it, so it was one book by each of the Bronte sisters. And then I had a Dickens omnibus of Oliver Twist's Great Expectations and A Christmas Carol, and I've now got individual copies of all of these as well. I am getting rid of one more omnibus edition. It's not one that I've replaced with individual copies, and this is an H.G. Wells omnibus. So this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 H.G. Wells stories in it. I have other H.G. Wells books as well. I've read The Time Machine, which is in here, and I didn't love it. It was alright. And I have, as I say, a couple of other H.G. Wells books. I decided to unhaul this, and I'll read the other ones first, and then if I want to read any of the stories that are in here, I will buy single volume editions of them, because it's really impractical to try and read a book of this size. The only one I hadn't realised that The War of the Worlds is in here, so I might just read that story before I get rid of it, but I'm not definitely sure if I can be bothered when I have other books of his that I can read first. Next we're on to, I've got one more actually that's sort of a slightly random one. I was looking around on my bookshelves for books that I could unhaul today because I'm trying to force myself to get rid of a few more books, and I found this one. This is called Music and Words by Trevor Herbert. So I bought this when I did my undergraduate degree in music to help me reference my sources properly in my essays, because referencing books is one thing, but referencing music scores or CDs or other things is a lot more difficult. So this was really useful. This was the one recommended by the university because it followed the referencing style that they encouraged, and I kept it because I always planned to go on to do more study, but then I found when I did my PGCE and then when I did my masters that both of those institutions issued their own guidelines on how to reference things. So I've just kept this one around because I thought it might be useful at some point, but I'm not likely to study music again. It's probably a bit out of date now anyway, and generally wherever you study they will tell you how they want you to reference things in your essays, so this one is finally going after many years of holding on to it randomly. So then next we've got a big pile of books which are ones that I haven't read but decided not to keep. The majority of them are from the same publisher, so I'll go through that in a minute. But first of all, we've got a couple of books that were my dad's that I had planned to read but I can't really be bothered. These were ones that he had when he studied German at A-level, so that's going back a heck of a lot of years. Sorry, Dad. So we've got Steppenwolf and the Prodigy by Hermann Hesse. I just read through the blurbs again today and I was like, you know what, I don't think I'm going to get around to reading these, so why am I hanging on to them? And then sometimes the wonder of BookTube gives you reasons to get rid of books that you maybe had planned to read. And recently there was a bit of talk about this book, Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell. I haven't read this. I was quite looking forward to reading it. I'd heard good things, and then recently it was optioned to be made into, I think, a film. It might be a Netflix adaptation, I'm not entirely sure. At which point a lot of Asian creators said that the Korean rap in this is really, really bad, and I don't need to read bad representation. I'd much rather read Own Voices representation, such as really enjoyed the Jenny Han books, To All the Boys I Loved Before, that series. So I'd rather read works that have accurate representation in them, and if I hear that a book is problematic because of its representation, then it makes me not want to read it. So that one is going. So then we have a big stack of books from the Companion Book Club. So a number of years ago my parents were helping at a jumble sale, and when they were packing up at the end of the day they found this big box of Companion Book Club books, and knowing what I'm like, they rescued this box of books for me. It's just sat in the corner of my room in this house for 2 years, and before that was sat in a box in their garage for about 5 years waiting for me to get around to actually reading them. And so I thought today, you know, it's taking up space, I need to actually sit down and have a look at whether I actually want to read all of the books that are in the box. And I've got rid of about, I would say about half of them. I just looked them up on Goodreads because they don't have any information about them. They all are this kind of binding with no blurbs or anything. So I looked them all up on Goodreads and just decided to get rid of this little stack for various reasons. Most of them I can't actually even remember what they're about. They're a mixture of historical fiction or thrillers or romance, I think, but none of them were very highly rated on Goodreads, and these ones didn't have blurbs that interested me. Some of the ones that I've kept, actually, there was no information about them at all on Goodreads. There was obviously some people that had read them, but there was no like blurb information, so I've kept a couple because I'm intrigued to know what they're about because I have no idea. But all of these ones I found and decided I didn't want to read, so I'm going to go through them quite quickly. There's no recognisable features on them, they're all just this very bland covering. So this one is called Two Is Lonely by Lynn Reed Banks. I think she wrote the Indian in the Cupboard book. I don't know if anyone remembers reading them when they were a kid, about the little toy Indian that he puts in the cupboard and it becomes comes to life. Anyway, so yeah, so this one's called Two is Lonely. This was, I think, a fairly standard romance that I wasn't really interested in. Then we have The Malin Streak by Catherine Cookson. This was some sort of historical romance thing again that I didn't think sounded interesting to me. Then we have Children of Cape Horn by Rosie Swale. I think this was non-fiction about her family's attempt to navigate Cape Horn, but it didn't interest me. Then we have Store by Alexander Fullerton. This is about a department store and whether it stays open or gets taken over. It sounds enthralling. Then we have Two by Derek Lambert. I think these are fairly standard thrillers. We've got the Yermakov Transfer and the Red House. I think they're sort of 70s spy thrillers about the Cold War, but the concepts didn't sound that interesting to me. We've got Two by Douglas Riemann, which are Go In and Sink and Rendezvous South Atlantic. So these are historical fiction set on warships, which, yeah, I don't really like the military side of it. Anyway. Then we have two books by John Cleary called Ransom and Mask of the Andes. I think, again, these were thrillers or historical, but I can't really remember. Didn't really interest me enough to even remember what they were about. And we have Two by Alexander Kent, which were The Flag Captain and Sloop of War. So again, these are historical war novels, I think probably Napoleonic, but these were like 6 and 13 in a series, and it sounded like a series that you have to read in order, and I'm like, I'm not gonna go out and buy a load of books that I'm just so I can read these two, because the concept didn't sound that interesting to me. Then we have Venus with Pistol by Gavin Lyle. This was something to do with art heists, but don't really know. And then finally Islands in the Stream by Ernest Hemingway. This is supposedly one of Hemingway's better books, but I read one of his books and I can't even remember which one it was, and I didn't enjoy it, so I thought I don't really want to read that one. So that's it. Those are all the books that I'm unhauling. I actually counted them and there are 37, which is the same as the number of books that I hauled in my last haul. So I did push myself to get rid of a few extras because I wanted to try and at least get rid of the number of books that I hauled in my last haul. So you may wonder what I do with my books when I unhaul them. I think that question gets asked sometimes. I'll probably give my dad first refusal. Some of them did come from him, but he might be interested in some of them, particularly some of these. Any that are from indie publishers, I will probably try and sell on to my friends at Ninja Book Box for their pre-loved independent online bookshop, which you should go and check out if you want to read more books by independent publishers. And then the rest will probably just go to either to my local charity shop, and there's a really nice one next door to my local library, or sometimes I take them to the book sales at National Trust places. So it'll be one or the other of those. So the majority of these will end up in charity shops where other people can buy them if they want and do some good. That is it. That is all the books that I am getting rid of in my unhaul today. I unhaul books about every 6 months or so, so you can probably expect another one around Christmas time. And yeah, we'll see how I get on, because as I say, it gets harder. It gets harder to unhaul books because I really do want to read most of the ones I've got left. So let me know, what do you do with books when you decide you don't want them anymore? Do you have a method for helping you unhaul things? I'd love to hear it. And yeah, that's it for today. So have a chat to me down in the comments and like this video if you liked it. Think about subscribing if you haven't already. You can also follow me on social media. That information is always listed in the description box below. And otherwise, all that's left to say is thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye!